Hey there, Heather Hollers, Jeff Cutter Diamond, welcome you to yet another Cutter Top 10 video to do with NFL drafts. And this time we're going to be looking at the top 10 draft busts in history, as not every great pick can be a superstar and all that. So I'm making a little bit of a change. But anyway, these guys have really been terrible and all that they just couldn't do anything right. All that. All right, here we go. Number 10 is the Boz, aka Brian Bosworth, 1987 Seattle Seahawks. The Boz was a colorful linebacker for the Oklahoma Sooners and got kicked out for failing a drug test before the big national championship game. So Bosworth was in a tight line. He was kind of out done his senior season, but he was kicked off the squad. So all he could do was be picked in what they call the supplemental draft. Not the regular draft, but the supplemental draft. Seattle decided to use their supplemental pick to take Brian Bosworth, which meant they lost the first round pick in the next season. So they needed the Boz. Seattle had some great offensive players, but defense, not much, other than Kenny Easley, who recently passed away. But anyway, the Boz came in with a lot of hype and all that. He was on right guard commercials. He was mad that the NFL forced him to wear 55 instead of his college number 44 because numbers in the 50s are basically for linebackers. Of course, nowadays that doesn't even matter, but in the 80s it did. The Boz was not too happy with everything, and he tried his best, but injuries would hurt him. And worst of all was his performance on Monday Night Football against Bo Jackson, as Bo Jackson banged into him for a touchdown. The Boz actually worked well on TV and some movies, like Stone Cold. But yeah, the Boz could have done better if it wasn't for injuries. Number 9 is Lawrence Phillips. Now, when I do my college football thing with Nebraska, 95 Nebraska, I say he who shall not be named because of what the fuck he did. But Lawrence Phillips had historical problems off the field before he was an NFLer. He was with the University of Nebraska, back-to-back national championships. Unfortunately, though, his off-field issues, including punching his girlfriend, were in the papers for all the wrong reasons. Fortunately, he got on the squad for both national title games. But the sixth pick went to the St. Louis Rams, and they decided to take Lawrence Phillips, thinking that they needed a running back. And Phillips was decent his first year, and then Dick Vermeil became the head coach, and Phillips blossomed until he got bitter over playing time, and Vermeil had to cut him. He went bouncing through San Francisco, Miami, even the Alouettes in the CFL. Unfortunately, though, Phillips had some massive problems. He ran over 3 teenagers with his car after a pickup football game gone wrong. Abuse allegations. He even murdered his own teammate in jail. And then, of course, he did what he would normally do. Some people would do in jail. If you kill someone, you die yourself. Anyway, yeah, Lawrence Phillips could have been much better if he wasn't so off the field trouble. Drama, as they call it. Number 8 is Matt Leinart. Matt Leinart was supposed to be the face of the Arizona Cardinals at quarterback. Well, of course, Lawrence Phillips, the running back, would be Marshall Faulk. But yeah, Matt Leinart in 2006 was picked by the Cardinals. He was the golden boy at USC with over 30 plus consecutive wins until the Rose Bowl loss in 2006 to Vince Young and the Texas Longhorns. Vince Young is not on this list, even though that he didn't really have much of an NFL career. Injuries and teams kind of not giving him playing time helped him out to be at best. Matt Leinart was a decent quarterback, but he couldn't throw for beans, and he couldn't get a starting role long term. It was so bad that Kurt Warner was even brought in to take care of Matt Leinart. So that was bad. Number 7 is Rick Meyer. Rick Meyer was a good quarterback for the Notre Dame, and of course, Notre Dame was the gold standard of colleges. So in 1993, the Seattle Seahawks picked him second overall after Drew Bledsoe went to the Pats first overall, which was a good move. it would have been big for Bledsoe to go to Seattle because Bledsoe played for Wazoo or Washington State, and Seattle's in Washington State. Nevertheless, Rick Meyer would play for Seattle, and he had a good rookie campaign, even better than Bledsoe. It's kind of like what number one did against Peyton Manning. Like he had some kind of success, Peyton didn't, and then the quarterback blew up. Of course, we don't know about Bledsoe's exploits with the Pats and the Bills and the Cowboys, but anyway, Rick Meyer was good. But then they learned that Rick Meyer could not pass to his left. So basically, they stacked everything to Meyer's right, the defenses, meaning that Meyer could only move to his left and someone would easily pick it up. Meyer lost his touch. The Saints picked him up for a first round pick, which was huge. But he didn't work out, and the Bears, it didn't work out with him. So the Golden Boy just couldn't do it. Number 6 is Tim Couch. Tim Couch was made to be a good quarterback for the University of Kentucky. I mean, other than Babe Pirelli and George Blanda, who else was good at quarterback for Kentucky? You could say Jaron Lorenzen or Andre Woodson, but probably not. But anyway, Tim Couch did his job with Cleveland. Well, he was the number one pick for the Browns in 1999, the year that the Browns were going to get back into the league after 3 years off. Cleveland wanted Tim Couch badly, and was kind of hoping for a lot of things to happen. But yeah, Tim Couch went to the Browns, and as their first pivot, well, he wasn't the starting pivot because they got Mr. Detmer, Ty Detmer in the expansion draft. But anyway, yeah, Tim Couch had to come in the first few games, and then he threw that Hail Mary in New Orleans to give Cleveland the win on Halloween night, 1999, the first time the Browns would taste success. Couch knew what he could do, but unfortunately, injuries and inconsistency ruined him. It was so bad the Cleveland fans cheered when he was hurt for the 2002 season, meaning that what's his face had to come in. I would say Kelly Holcomb, but I'm probably wrong. But anyway, yeah. But Tim Couch went to Green Bay and nothing else after that. Number 5 is the Incredible Bulk, aka Tony Mandarich of the Packers. Mandarich was a great offensive tackle for Michigan State. He could bench press and all that. He wild scouts with that stuff. He was like Hulk Hogan, all that. Unfortunately, Mandarich, before his senior campaign with Michigan State, left to go bodybuilding. However, the Packers wanted Mandarich badly. After Troy Aikman went first overall to the Cowboys, Green Bay was on the clock. They had Barry Sanders, they had Deion Sanders, they had Derek Thomas in mind, maybe, but they decided to go with Tony Mandarich, the tackle from Michigan State. Unfortunately, Mandarich had lost 15 pounds in the offseason, and people thought that was because of steroids, because, the NFL test for steroids, he was deflated. I mean, Tony Mandarich was Canadian too, which people forget about. Unfortunately, though, Mandarich just couldn't live up to the hype in the 3 seasons with the Packers. He was out. He stayed kind of within football circles, but what people forget was that Mandarich actually played a few years for the Colts in the 90s, and he actually spent those years actually helping on the offensive line with Peyton Manning. And people forget about that. That's kind of why he's low on this list, because he had a second wind and did okay. Anyway. Number 4 is Charles Rogers, Detroit Lions. Well, he went to Michigan State. He was a good wide receiver. Detroit was salivating picking up because, after all, Detroit is in Michigan. So Charlie Rogers was made to be big and all that. Unfortunately, though, injuries would ruin him, and he only played 15 games in 3 seasons, which is not that great whatsoever. Even Tony Mandarich played much more than 15 games. But yeah, Charles Rogers was just injury prone, off-field issues, and Detroit wishes they had done better. It wouldn't be until Megatron, aka Calvin Johnson, came into the league that they got their wide receiver. Number 3 is Akili Smith for the Bengals. The 1999 draft saw a lot of creativity. Of course, Tim Couch was picked first overall. The Eagles were next on the clock, and everyone thought that Ricky Williams was going to head to Philadelphia. It was a given. But no, they took Donovan McNabb, quarterback of Syracuse. The Eagles fans booed the shit out of him. However, McNabb got the last laugh, helping the Eagles get to 4 straight NFC title games in the early 2000s, winning one of them, but still, that was huge. And of course, this was the draft that Ricky Williams was future was mortgaged by New Orleans, basically trading everything to Washington. And Washington made a few picks, including Chris Samuels with those Saints picks. So Achilles Smith ended up being third from the University of Oregon. He was good, but what happened was the Wonderlic test, which tests your intelligence and your football IQ. He got a 9 out of 50. A 9 out of 50. 25 is a pass. That's how bad it was. So anyway, Achilles Smith just couldn't do it. The Bengals limped on. He only started 17 games, and the Bengals didn't have a star quarterback till Carson Palmer popped on the scene. Number 2 is Jamarcus Russell, 2007 with the Raiders. Jamarcus Russell was big for LSU, helping them out and doing quite well. He was a little bit big, but he was 6'6", so no problems. And then Jamarcus Russell was picked first overall by the Raiders. They needed a quarterback after Rich Gannon was ran out of town. And when he was healthy, he was good. Unfortunately, though, there was a problem. During the offseason, it just looked like he didn't have motivation and he had poor performance. And he had gained weight terribly at his first training camp. So Jamarcus was just not as mobile as he used to be for LSU. Of course, lack of motivation. A lot of people said that it was because, getting that big $50 million signing bonus or whatever it was meant that he had the money and he didn't have to work for it. Well, he had to work for it. After a couple of years, he was basically gone from football. No NFL team took him, and that was just pure sad. Jamarcus Russell would be one of the worst number 1 draft picks of all time, but not the worst. That would go to numero uno, Ryan Leaf, San Diego Chargers. Ryan Leaf was a star quarterback for Wazoo, aka Washington State, kind of like what Drew Bledsoe was. Led them to the Rose Bowl and were followed by a touchdown to Michigan. 98, there was still debate. Was Ryan Leaf going to be the pivot to go number 1? Did the Colts want Ryan Leaf? Ryan Leaf admitted that his motivation kind of ruined it, and the Colts took Peyton because Ryan said if he was picked number 1, he would spend some time in Vegas, which was a red flag. The Colts chose Peyton Manning, and he made them proud with being one of the best number 1 draft picks of all time. And of course, Ryan Leaf went 2nd overall, which I stupidly said Ryan Leaf was 1st overall. Nope, 2nd overall. He's 1st overall on this list. Ryan Leaf went to San Diego. He actually started quite good. He won 2 games, his first 2 starts, becoming the first guy since John Elway to do so. And then, the third game against Kansas City, he was 1 for 15, throwing more interceptions than completions. He went bonkers at a locker room reporter saying, "Don't fucking talk to me. Knock it off," and all stuff. He read an apology on camera, but he crumpled it up and threw it away. Roy's rookie campaign did not go so well. He was bad, and I believe this was the season in which he was actually caught playing golf instead of rehabbing his injuries. He only won 4 games as a starter in 3 seasons with the Chargers, not even 2 per year. Well, just a little bit over 1 year. The Chargers cut their losses, got rid of him. He tried to leave John with Dallas. He didn't work out so well. He was an assistant coach for a while, and then he went to prison for a few years because of some football chicanery. What's even bigger is that, losing Ryan Leaf actually was the best thing for the Chargers because the Chargers did have the number 1 pick, but they swapped that to Atlanta for Atlanta's number 4 pick. Atlanta took Michael Vick 1st overall, and when Michael Vick was not being stupid with his money and dogs, you know what I'm talking about. That was a massive move for Atlanta to pick up a quarterback as good as Steve Barkowski or Chris Chandler. But the Chargers, it worked out because they took LaDainian Tomlinson from Texas Christian, who once ran for over 400 yards in a game. And it worked. LT was the face of the Chargers and partially the Jets, but it worked out. Getting rid of Ryan Leaf was the best thing possible. Fight me on it. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. I do.